The massive growth spurt in cloud computing continued in 2022, and it doesn't appear to be slowing down now that we're well into 2023. We can credit the cloud for enabling quick, significant changes as we all kept adjusting to each new normal. Rapid adoption should now be in the rearview mirror. It's time that we stop the shoot first, aim later approach and return to the more sustainable ready, aim, then shoot. It's a pragmatic approach that's certainly going to prompt a range of questions from did we miss anything to what now? Well, WWT's Cloud Priorities for 2023 includes these questions as well as advice on how to find the correct answers. And there are 4 deceptively simple cloud priorities outlined in their research: optimizing cloud environments, enabling the business with cloud security, closing the cloud skills gap, and understanding the advantages of Cloud Edge. Today's show should be considered a supplement to this report as we delve deeper into cloud optimization, the systematic evaluation and allocation of cloud resources to the workloads and applications found throughout your IT environment. Cloud computing is fundamental to digital and business transformation. So whether you're new to the cloud or you've already invested in public, private, or hybrid cloud deployment models, a systematic approach to your cloud maturity will impact your future success. Now, I had a chance to sit down and dig into the details around optimization with 2 of Worldwide Technology's very best, Jack French, Director of Cloud Platforms,
Appreciate it, Rob.
and Josh Bushman, Cloud Marketplace and Resale Practice Lead.
Yep,
I
thanks,
learned
Rob.
a lot. Now I get to share that conversation with you. My name is Rob Boyd. You're watching Tech 37, your home for technology, education, and collaboration from Worldwide Technology. Well, all right. Welcome to Tech 37, gentlemen. Glad to have you with us. I tell you what, before we get into our topic, let's just set up some introductions, if you don't mind. Jack, I'll start with you. Tell us, or tell me, tell all of us, what is it you do for Worldwide, and what's important about that for our topic today?
Yeah, so Jack French, I'm director of our cloud platforms team. My group is responsible for global solutions development and architecture. And essentially what that means is a team of business development managers, technical solution architects, and pre-sales resources that help drive all things cloud forward at WWT. So that could be public, hybrid, and private. So cost optimization is a big part of that.
Interesting. Okay. Well, and I was going cloud optimization and then was going to get into cost, just a little preview of what's coming up. And there you go, already saying cost optimization. So I have a feeling that's going to come back up. That's at the tip of your tongue. But before we get there, Josh, you guys work closely together. But Josh, what is your role at Worldwide Technology? What are you responsible for?
Yeah, thanks, Rob. Actually, I roll directly up to Jack. So I lead our cloud marketplace and cloud resell teams. So that goes across public sector, commercial, technically global right now.
Okay, excellent. Well, I appreciate you guys. Jack, I wonder if you could set us off here and talk about cloud optimization. Why is that a priority, much less the first priority, but why is that a priority now of all times? What's important for us to understand?
Sure. Yeah, I think cloud optimization and cost optimization is critically important right now. And I for a few factors. The first, I think over the last 24, 36 months, organizations have rushed into getting workloads into the cloud, whether it be driven because of COVID or the new remote hybrid workforce that's out there and trying to get applications closer to their workforce or customers or end users. And, now we're at a place where they're taking a second to look back and okay, did I make the right decisions? Did I move too quickly with some of these workloads? Do I have cloud sprawl or bloat that's costing me more maybe than I anticipated? Of course, with the market the way that it is today and some of the unexpected, costs related to interest rates and other things like that, cost, I think, is something that everyone is highly focused on. And, having an unoptimized cloud environment can lead to runaway costs. So it's something that I think almost all organizations are taking a hard look at right now. Again, whether it was driven because of COVID or the hybrid workforce or any of those factors, organizations are taking a deep look right now of where can I save money? Am I properly optimized? And did I rush too quickly into cloud?
One thing I think, and I know you mentioned COVID, but, logistically, there's items that are not available. So, when you're building out a data center, you may not have all the items you need to build that out completely. So, some of these companies are realizing there's a long lag in being able to get these up and running, just because of logistics from COVID.
Are you speaking to the supply chain challenges and that means I can't do certain things. So am I more inclined to go to cloud with the assumption that they have the resources already available because they're going to multi-tenant something out to me perhaps? Do you think your clients, not your clients, but just people in general that are using cloud services, do people who are not optimized know they're not optimized, or is that something they have to be woken up to? Does that make sense?
I think it's a mixture, right? Some of these organizations already have tools in place and have no idea how to read that data, right? So they have something working that would have all the stuff they need to figure out that they're not optimized. They don't have somebody to read that data or interpret that data and then pull it back in, show that to a CTO or CFO, and really explain that they're not optimized. And on the other end, there's people that have no idea. They're new to their cloud journey. They don't realize that they even need a tool or any type of management around optimization. So we see it a ton. I mean, most companies out there are not fully optimized. They may be 80 to 90%, which is a good rate, but there's a ton of them out there in that 60 to 70% optimization rate.
Well, what kind of things would clue someone in, Jack? What kind of things would clue a company in as far as, hey, you might not be optimized where you think you are? Are there things that people might be early alarm systems for this?
There's quite a few. And really what you just described is maybe the first step in getting a handle of this whole cost optimization or cloud optimization area, which is really informed, right? Like, do I have visibility into my cloud environment? And so, if an organization doesn't feel like they have a good picture of where their spend is going and why they're spending so much in the cloud, or maybe it's more than they anticipated, or there's a bogey hits them one month where all of a sudden it spikes way up, that's a good indicator that you don't have a good handle of your cloud environment, and we need to dig a little bit deeper and build some good practice around optimization or even just better information and visibility into what you have. But yeah, I would say if you don't feel comfortable with understanding where all the spend is going and why it costs what it is, that's the first key indicator. Absolutely. Yeah. There's all sorts of things that it could pop up as well. I mean, if an organization is spending hundreds of millions of dollars or even spending $1 million a year, there's a term called cloud sprawl, right? I mean, the whole idea of cloud spend and cloud operating models is you're decentralizing spend. It's maybe not all running through a central procurement office like it used to. You've got business units spinning up different accounts in different areas. And I think a lot of times what we find is an organization will uncover that maybe somebody is starting to use accounts that they weren't aware of, or all of a sudden they've got AWS spun up in a region when they thought that they were a Google customer or vice versa, right? And so it's more so than just looking at a bill, but really understanding organizational wide, do I have a good handle on all of the different aspects?
And I think think of acquisitions that a company makes, right? So, a company makes an acquisition and they have a totally different mind frame on how they're approaching cloud. So, they don't have that same connection to that, newly acquired company. And, they have to pull that under their umbrella and figure out what they're doing there. So I'd say that's one. Another, I think, easy indicator, if somebody signs these large, enterprise level cloud commits with one of the hyperscalers and they're over their number, there's some optimization there. It may not be tooling, but it may be, hey, you didn't agree to the correct terms or amount of commitment to them because you didn't know how marketplace works, or you didn't, there's a lot of different variables in there. But if you're hitting your number, and overshooting that by a lot, then most likely there's some optimization that could come into play.
Has it gotten easier for someone to kind of understand what they're spending money on and how they're forecasting and then use that in an intelligent manner? Has that improved?
I would say I'll kind of jump in on this one, Jack, just because I'm kind of living it right now. I've got my team, going out and kind of doing a bake-off between a bunch of, there's hundreds or thousands of tools out there that you can use to get that visibility across multiple hyperscalers, kind of that one single pane of glass that you can see your consumption over, if you have a hybrid solution. And they're doing a bake-off right now. So I had no idea how many there were out there. And we're looking at 6 or 7, and they all do different functions. But a lot of them do bring that single pane of glass in so that you can see your consumption over multiple hyperscalers.
I think to add on to that too, the challenge then is I think visibility is getting easier and easier. And to Josh's point, there's no shortage of tooling to help make sense of your spend. Where the real challenge comes in is, now that I understand the spend, do I understand what each of these line items actually equate to in the business? Good example would be, here's a list of 10 services that's costing me $50,000 a month, but what are those services? What application is that inside my environment? What business value is that driving for my organization? And that's really, the crux of the inform or visibility portion. It's one thing to see your spend. It's another to really understand what that spend is. I may say that $50,000 doesn't need high availability, or I can do backups different because it's just test dev. Whereas this 50K over here on the bill is mission critical. This is what my customers are using or my sales force is using. I need high availability. I need this, I need that. And so this 50K may have a different value to my organization than this 50K. And so I can treat each differently and optimize each differently either. So that's where, to Josh's point, no shortage in seeing the spend, but do we really understand what the spend is? And that's when you can start optimizing.
You guys have a tool that we've talked about on Tech 37 before, like the cloud maturity, I guess, the model. And and even theoretically, I like the way this sounds, just because it just makes sense. Because I would assume that getting to that part, I almost picture what you were speaking of there, Jack, is a requirement there be good alignment between business and IT that we're always encouraging more of, because you need to know how are these things being used, but that's going to require a relationship that says, I understand what your priorities are, and how are we, as assuming it's in IT, just using it generically, how are we helping you execute on that and providing you the resources that you need, but we're doing it intelligently for the business. We're not overspending or underspending, wherever that is. And that, I assume, was part of the optimization. Can you, let's start with Josh, because I'll just bop back and forth. But feel free to throw it over. The cloud maturity model, how important is that? I would assume people look at optimization from a slightly different lens, depending on how far into their cloud maturity is. Is that fair?
Yeah, definitely. And Jack, obviously, I think you're more in depth in doing this, but I think just quickly, everybody's in a different part of their journey into the cloud. Some organizations may have like a CCOE, set up already, where they have a department that strictly looks into stuff like that.
Can you explain CCOE for me real quick? Just make sure we don't lose anybody on the acronym.
It's Cloud Center of Excellence, but Jack, I'm going to let you jump in on this one.
Really, when you think about the maturity model, cost optimization comes into play here. And what I would say is, this is where we start to get into a conversation about FinOps and the difference between, FinOps and cost optimization. And as Josh mentioned, a CCOE, or a Cloud Center of Excellence, is meant to be a group of key stakeholders within an organization. You've got maybe accounting, product ownership, business unit, IT, engineering, development. So all the different key stakeholders within an organization would have representation inside of this Cloud Center of Excellence, sometimes referred to as a Cloud Business Office. And this team is creating consistent governance and policy and visibility, and creating the KPIs for that inform stage that I mentioned. So they're the ones that, as you mature as an organization, you develop the CCOE, it continues to grow and expand and have, tentacles into more and more parts of the business. And then we can start adopting a FinOps type of discipline, which FinOps is a blend of finance and DevOps. And so you build real models and discipline around control of cloud spend. And cost optimization is like a mechanism within FinOps, which is all part of the CCOE, which comes as you mature as an organization. So for somebody to turn on cloud tomorrow and start playing around with it, to expect them to have maybe this maturity is probably not likely. However, as you really start to grow and take cloud more seriously, you should move to that maturity model, have a better visibility into all the different business units that are impacted, form a proper CCOE, adopt FinOps, and now cost optimization gets much easier, or much intentional. So yeah, it's a lot, but hopefully that helps kind of explain.
Well, and I was curious, I did not realize or think that it was different disciplines in terms of FinOps versus cost optimization, or it's a component, I guess, one of the other is what you're saying right there. But is multi-cloud the way most are doing it now? And is that also advancing or continuing to complicate? What's the good and the bad of kind of a multi-cloud type discipline?
Complicated is the key word there, right? And so, I would think almost all organizations today are in some type of hybrid model. So they have a portion of private and they have public cloud. And most recently now, we've seen kind of this shift, I guess not even a shift, but an evolution from hybrid into multi, where now we still have an on-prem environment that we're using, private cloud. We have at least one public cloud provider, and now we're introducing another public cloud provider, which creates a multi-cloud environment. And anytime you do that, you're introducing all sorts of complexity, from different security to governance to policy requirements to even the bills and languages are different as you're interpreting where your spend goes. So yeah, absolute complexity. That's why it's critical to make sure that you've got good governance and FinOps and CCOE and everything defined. Otherwise, that can quickly run away from you.
Yeah, it feels like there's a balancing act. How do you know? Because I forget what the terminology was, but we always talk about cloud-enabled a lot of units within an organization to make decisions on their own about purchasing IT resources or executing on certain things without having to, because the stopgap used to be, well, you're going to have to procure servers and then have server space and then have, different things that ultimately led you back to IT. But as soon as it became something that you could hop on a website and click a few buttons and suddenly you had process, capacity, whatever it is that you needed, it became harder to control. Is that part of a mature governance model?
We do see a lot of companies moving towards models where they may have something like a private marketplace, right? Where they've gone in and done the background work on, what ISVs or what softwares they're willing to allow onto their, application. So, it kind of gives that I want to say permissions to one person or one department. So it gives visibility to all departments to where they could go in and request some of these softwares. But the end result is they have to request that it goes up to the next layer who has the permission to say, yes, this has been approved, for X amount of dollars or however they want to set it up. But we're seeing that in every hyperscaler. I think, probably AWS is the most advanced right now, where they've got, not only, the third-party software products, but they have service catalogs for their own products where, it gives visibility into all departments, but it does not give permission to actually procure that to all departments, and they can manage that however they like. They could give it permissions all the way down if they want to, or keep it at a top level.
Bum, 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 bum.
Bum, 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 bum. Bum, 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 bum. Bum, bum, bum. Bum, 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 bum. Bum, bum, bum.
The technology inside, the technology that moves the world. Intel.
What is Worldwide doing in this area of cloud marketplace? Because I feel like you guys are continuing to kind of help your clients execute on these things in a more regimented manner so that things can be kind of kept under control. Josh, we'll stay with you because I think that's been one of your focus.
No, definitely. And all the marketplaces are different, right? It'd be great if they were cookie cutter. It would be a lot easier for me, I will say. I think it would be easier for, any client managers out there trying to navigate this and customers as well. The big thing we see is a lot of these companies they don't understand marketplace. Procurement departments are the ones that are typically involved, and they really struggle. It kind of takes that normal, PO that they issue to a Worldwide or to, whatever consulting partner they're using, and it takes that away. There's no POs needed anymore for these transactions. So it's confusing to them. So they need somebody in there that has that expertise to not only, help make it an easy procurement model, because it is. I mean, once you know the ins and outs of it, it's an easy procurement model. There's thousands and thousands of different software products and thousands of ISVs on here. So having somebody to help you navigate through all the complexities is definitely a bonus. We see companies that do that on their own and really struggle with it.
Well, and what I wonder about is it feels like what I'm picturing with just cloud marketplace as a concept is there's a set of approved menu offerings that someone can choose from. And so there's been some due diligence and work to kind of create the menu. And as you order off the menu, then there's going to be some automatic processes on the back end, not just for procuring it, but also for kind of checking off that this much has been allocated out of a certain bucket, in terms of cost or whatever it may be. And so it feels like marketplace is kind of a sign of the industry maturity in terms of being able to give you the tools you need to get back a feeling of control that you may have lost with things start splintering as much as they potentially can. And is that a reasonable way to characterize it? And is that a way it should be looked at for gaining optimization?
100%. I mean, part of that whole optimization talk is, when they go make these large cloud commits, is marketplace should be a piece of that, right? So it shouldn't just be based on consumption only, because each one of the hyperscalers has different, limits that you can run through the marketplace that will retire off of your cloud commit. So everyone's different, of course, so they're not cookie cutter once again, but you have to know that up front. Otherwise, like we talked about, you might overcommit on one of your, cloud commits through a hyperscaler, and you can also undercommit and not take advantage of, the full consumption discount that you can get, from the different hyperscalers. But it does give you definitely visibility into what you've purchased. So anything you purchase through, one of the marketplaces, you can see all that in one single pane of glass. So previously, if you went outside of the marketplace, somebody's got to manage that, right? So somebody in the organization says, hey, we've got, 30 different ISVs that we do work with. I don't know when our end date is up on, Palo Alto renewal that we have. So with Marketplace, you can manage those renewals much easier, and it gives you a lot more visibility into software and licensing purchases.
Well, I'd add one thing there too, Josh. In addition to the cloud contracts and burning down the commitments that you've got, the marketplace also, if an organization goes and just points and clicks and downloads a virtual firewall, that's great, but they're paying list price. Running through a WWT, we're able to negotiate a bigger enterprise deal with them to provide better pricing. So, the whole idea of cost optimization is try to, negotiate contracts and most efficient resources. And so even outside of the contract, you're providing better terms and conditions and pricing than they would get by just pointing and clicking from the normal 100%. Marketplace. So helps with optimization.
Yeah. And it feels like with the marketplace, the idea is it, am I understanding correctly that this is also a way, because I know a lot of people have done some custom options to do this, but to be able to, you're advertising those resources to your internal people, so you're telling them, hey, there are 1,000 tools out there you could go choose from, and this may light you up because you read it on a thread. But when you try to do it, you realize it's not in our marketplace. So you need to either find some equivalent in the marketplace, or maybe there's a ticketing system to say, hey, we need this in my group for these reasons. And there's probably a process that you guys encourage people to set up to say, there's a new tool that we need consideration into our marketplace so that we can get our work done.
There's, like we said, thousands of ISVs coming online daily. So the good thing is there's a lot of options. Whereas in the past, most people probably wouldn't know who some of these smaller ISVs are, and they're now getting that footprint inside of some of these marketplaces where, they might have a great product and they just weren't known. It now gives them visibility into some of those smaller ISVs that they maybe didn't do business with before.
In addition to all those ISV solutions and everything in the marketplace, when we talk about real cloud maturity and governance and building an operating model for the organization, what you're describing, Rob, is almost building an internal service catalog that includes all those great marketplace items, but also would have pre-configured virtual machines with policies and governance that match the company's security policies, right? Or already have the built-in tags that we need to properly provide visibility into what these services are when they're running, so I know what they are when they show up in the bill. And so in addition to the cloud native services that we can put in an approved service catalog, you also can add all the great solutions that Josh talked about in the marketplace. So now my company, I don't have to worry about that sprawl. I don't worry about somebody throwing a credit card over in some random closet in IT and spinning up a bunch of resources. Now they still may do it, but I'm providing ease and automation with this pre-configured service catalog that includes everything, and it's ready to go. So that's the dream. That's how you continue to move up through that maturity model.
But where's the maturity for worldwide technology in terms of how it's helping customers execute on their dreams of what they're hoping to achieve through cloud?
Great question. And I think I'll say, years ago when the cloud practice was first formed, it was this, small incubation pod inside of WWT where there was a bunch of really smart architects and engineers that knew everything about public cloud. And that's great. And we did some really cool and compelling projects. But where we've matured, and I think where our real value as a company is starting to grow, is we've integrated that team with all the other business units inside of WWT. And that's the real differentiator in my mind for WWT is, for 30 plus years, we've built these relationships with all the partners that Josh has mentioned that organizations are still trying to use. So just because you move to the public cloud doesn't mean network and security goes away, and the years of investment that you've made in your management plane or security and networking, all that you want to integrate smoothly. And if you go to just a small cloud boutique partner that only does public cloud, they're not going to understand all the interdependencies that you've got in the data center or the hybrid or the multi-cloud environment. And so with WWT, we've taken that small public cloud pod and we've integrated with our business advisors and analytics team, which is all the data and analytics and data scientists group that we've got, our digital and application services team that are, developing net new cloud native applications, our security team, which is, doing everything from, cyber range exercises to cybersecurity to on-prem tool rationalization. And so our maturity has gone from here, we've got a lot of really smart public cloud people to, well, now we just have cloud embedded into all the different teams, automation and workforce experience. And I think that's what organizations are looking for is help me make this sense or make sense of cloud with everything that I've got today. So it's exciting to be a part of. It's fun.
This may be kind of a dumb question, but it's just, I'll say it anyway because I'm good at those things. But you remember when we would talk about whether or not cloud was the right operating model, or the dream was, hey, cloud can do these things for you, so you can use less IT staff, and it's a shared resource. You get better performance potentially and availability and things like this with less people that you have to staff for it. But then now I hear us talking so much about, well, you need a center of excellence, and there's going to be these different things you need to analyze, and there's nothing wrong with any of that. But has the balance shifted at all in terms of the value of doing it all on premises versus doing whatever, maybe all, but it depends on your business model, but, moving the preponderance of things to the cloud? I would assume the cost benefits are still there because everybody is still there and we're moving at a pace where I don't know how we do it differently anyway. But any thoughts on that shift over time?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's a desperate need for people there's a desperate talent need right now in the industry for people with public cloud skills, but also even you talked about FinOps.org. An entire industry was created, here around FinOps and cloud cost optimization. So, there's just a shifting of talent and resources as we go from people that were maybe pulling tapes out and plugging them in somewhere else to, or putting them in an Iron Mountain truck to, well, now how do we manage this in the cloud and governance and security and operations? And so it's just a shifting of resources. If anything, I would say that, the chat GPTs and the automation and my peer, Tanner Betchel, who does all the cool automation stuff at WWT, he's the guy that you can blame for, staff reduction now, not cloud.
Well, I love blaming Tanner for anything I can. Yeah, he's been on the show several times. He's funny. Depends on whatever he's building that day around his homestead. Well, just because I want to make sure we didn't overlook this, but since it came from the priorities report, we mentioned the first priority was optimization. The second is security in the report. So obviously, Worldwide Technology is saying don't take the foot off the pedal in regards to security. But you're kind of speaking of skills, which is number 3 on the priority list. And is it, not that we're here to talk about skills, but I think it's interesting. And I know that personally, we all think about where do I need to be studying because there's always something to learn at the pace that everything's going at. Is it there's still this shift. I think IT skills that we used to think of in terms of layer 3 and 4 and the OSI stack, that type of thing are still important. But now, boy, everybody, it sounds like, needs to have some minimum level of cloud knowledge. That's such a loose term. But in terms of it, maybe it just is oriented towards the direction in which the company they are working for or want to work for is pursuing it, I guess, because you kind of got to pick off what slice of that you're going to run after, right?
Well, yeah, I would say cybersecurity, you hit on it. If I was my nephew is he's going into his last year in college. So he's a junior in college, and he's in cybersecurity. And I was like, if you're going to go somewhere, that's where I would head. And, so AI, ML, desperate need for resources and people, cybersecurity, you're not going to go wrong. So those two areas are just going to continue to explode. But Josh,
yeah, funny you mentioned that because my son is graduating this year, and I'm pushing him I'm nudging him into the Air Force under the cybersecurity realm over there. And I told him, you come out of there and you can write your own ticket. But I think security's changed a lot over the years, right? Like, I think previously it was kind of just focused on one small area. Now it's under, DevSecOps, there's IAM, there's, all these multiple layers that you have to have security. And it's not just like it used to be where you're protecting your servers and switches and that sort of thing. Now it goes across so many different, vectors. and there's so many different ISVs that cover these. I think it's completely changed on the thought of security, especially in the cloud.
Well, make sure that we don't lose track of this. Since we're talking about optimization, we'd mentioned a center of excellence as being kind of a good marker and a goal. Can we summarize kind of what we recommend people should be looking at in terms of no matter where they are on the continuum, but when it comes to this call for optimization going forward?
If I think of an optimization maturity model, it starts with just visibility. Maybe that's, you start with just getting a clear understanding of what that bill is, and then we start working on tagging services. So now I've got a bill, I'm reading it, but let me put tags on the services that are running. So on the bill, it shows up and I know that, okay, this is business application 1, this is business application 2, this is dev test. And I start then having some more intelligence on that bill. Then I start looking at, okay, how can I automate all the new services and teams that are creating resources in my environment to apply tags and governance and policies. So now that I feel comfortable that when resources come up, they're going to be in the most optimized state that they can, at least when they're started. And then you get further along into evaluating how your contracts are set up and what marketplace levers I'm pulling. And then you continue to move down and you're saying, okay, well, is my cloud center of excellence looking at everything? And there's a term called unit economics where now I'm saying, okay, I'm saving money by instance types, but do I know what that little tweak does to the business? If it, a unit of cost, for example, if this service running cost me $5 to generate a new lead for my business, can I get it down to $4.30 by making this change, right? So you just start evolving in how you're looking at what that one little tag or what that line item on a bill does, and that's how you move through that maturity model. But you've got to have that cloud center of excellence. You've got to have people dedicated to it. You got to have buy-in from engineering. And so you could almost layer the cost optimization maturity model on top of the cloud maturity model.
The one thing I think we see more than anything is, great, we've got these tools that are reading this and it goes granularly all the way down to these different business units or applications. And a lot of times it'll say, you look at a name and it'll say NA, right? There's no tag on it. So the tools are only as good as, like you said, Jack, the people putting that in. So that's where you need that CCLE and you need the buy-in so that when they're tagging these things, we have a tag to send it back to. We know what business unit that goes to or what application. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a major struggle for most companies is, think of it as how we use Salesforce, right? We go in and try to find an opportunity and it's only as good as the people putting it in. If they're not putting the information in there we need, it's not useful to us. So the tagging is kind of where it starts, and it's got to be done correctly and tagged, the way they need it to show up visually.
Are you guys seeing clients do a kind of a shared cost model where they're looking to push the cost of their operation out to the units that are using it? And because setting that up seems like a natural way to also keep your eye on it, because you want people responsible for, it feels like, for using resources to pay for those resources so that you have a balance, because there's some going to be more use than others, right?
Yeah, I think most organizations start as like a showback model where now I'm showing this business unit what they're actually costing with these resources, and then it evolves into a chargeback. So showback, chargeback is typically the path that they take. Now, it depends on who holds the budget. Is IT still the center of all this, or are they pushing budgets out to different business units? But yeah, you're spot on. Showback is a good first step. Like, can I accurately show this team what they are spending in the cloud? If you can get there, you're hitting that inform stage pretty well, and then chargeback is the next.
That's a great point to communicate over, right? Which is to say, this is the number I see you guys using. And if they're coming back and going, that's ridiculous, there's no way we did that, then you go, well, let's work together to figure out what you think you did and why it's doing this, because something's amiss. And that becomes a piece of the puzzle. Yeah.
As I say, you don't want to be the highest point on the graph when they're going down and looking into a business application.
Worldwide obviously provides resources to help organizations get their heads wrapped around this and get under control. Can you talk a little bit as we close things out about what kind of resources you recommend for dipping a toe in the water, regardless of your maturity? What is it that you want to see people come to you with, and what does that look like?
The first piece, if they're just starting their cloud journey, is number one, understanding all the three hyperscalers and kind of getting that idea of, hey, who do we want to start out with? What are the differences between the three? What applications do you have running in your data center now? And, we can, imply which one would run better on AWS versus Google or Microsoft versus Google. So, really understanding, number one, what you want to move over, and not just saying, hey, we want to, plow through and go to the cloud and move everything over, because that's the worst thing you can do. There's things that could sit on-prem that, need to stay on there, or, it's not going to be an advantage for you. So I think understanding that first would be, your first bet. And we've got, a ton of consultants that can dive into that with them. I mean, we were born, on-prem, in that hybrid model is very, well known to us. So a lot of these companies that come in, are cloud focused. So I think that's where having that benefit of somebody that, maybe was born on-prem like we were, where we were, slinging machines out there and we know how they work, is a major advantage.
Jack, what do you recommend in terms of kind of describing first step resources and where people should be engaged? What should they look for worldwide to help them do?
Yeah, I would say critical first step is what are the drivers for going to the cloud in the first place? Why are we in moving forward with this endeavor? And so,
does that include people that are already in the cloud? You still ask that question, like, why are you there? Just to see?
It can. Yeah, I think it can, but like what business drivers got us here? And so if we can map back what we're trying to accomplish. So, if we go into it, hey, I need to save costs. Like, you got to help me drive down the bill. Well, I would say, well, what is running in the cloud? Why is it here? Because again, I can go turn off some services. I can reduce instance type sizes, but it's going to maybe impede the performance, or it's going to reduce the high availability of these services. And so unless they fully understand what's running, and that's where we can come in and help. And again, we go back to the maturity model. Do you have a solid CCOE? Do you have a proper operating model created around cloud? So understanding the full scope of what we're looking at, I think, is the critical first step. And then we can get to a place where we can help them reduce costs and save money and build better efficiencies into how they're moving forward. So. Yeah,
I know in the report, as you talk about how people can tackle this, it's kind of a discover, define, then optimize. And I would say the discover is what you mentioned in terms of visibility, which is you got to know what's happening first. And you got to match that up, as you said, with the goals.
Yep.
Is that even what you wanted to achieve? Are you getting what you want? Because I would assume there's some people that also are going, wow, this cloud's turned into more complexity. I don't know if we're getting the value out of it. And you guys have the ability to tell them, no, you're definitely not getting the value out of it, but here's a way in which we can move towards that, or here's a way to get that back under control. We the fourth optimization that we did a different deep dive on with Kurt and Jennifer was around edge. And I feel like edge is one of those technologies everyone may not be aware of, but it could be the missing link in terms of understanding, well, you're just trying to do too much at too much of a distance. And with a few small tweaks, and there's been technology that's worked out that's going to help you get the performance expectations that you already have. It's just not deployed correctly, or it's not, you're not using the tools to their extent the way they were designed.
You had a great point. It's not, we're talking primarily about public cloud, but edge, same concept applies. And even your private cloud, same concept applies. Are we getting the most value out of the resources that are available? That's truly what cost optimization.
I mean, we see it in rakeback with customers where,
good call out.
They get somebody at the top level saying, we got to move to the cloud, and they don't do due diligence and dive into it. And now they're backpedaling, and they've made these, giant commitments to a hyperscaler. And, of course, hyperscalers want you in the cloud. They're not going to tell you, no, hold off. That doesn't seem like it's going to work.
Yeah.
And that's where a consulting partner really comes in, because we don't have that opinion that is just cloud. It is, what's best for you? Is it hybrid? Is it cloud? Yeah. So, I see that a lot, where now they're pulling that rake and they're pulling their, cloud spend back because they jumped right in and didn't do due diligence.
Cloud's a very easy thing to get wrong. I feel like it's very easy to get started and throw stuff in it and feel like you're making progress, only to turn around and go, we are spending way too much and this isn't scalable, it's not tenable, it's not going to last. What is most important to remember coming out of this discussion?
Yeah, I would say in the topic of cost optimization, FinOps, cloud optimization, it really is about visibility. Make sure you understand what you have in the cloud. And if you don't feel like you have good comfort in visibility, that's the best place to start, right? Let's work on reporting and tagging and get a solid foundation of, okay, now I can see everything I have. And from there, we can work on defining goals and optimizing. But it really is about, the first step is getting visibility and discovering what you have out there.
Yeah, I feel like that strikes familiarity to me from a personal standpoint. I'm most stressed when I feel like I've got too many things going on. I don't have a handle on it. And as soon as I start kind of just dumping everything into one place, and I feel a peace come over me. And I would imagine that organizationally speaking, you guys are offering that level of peace through helping maybe establish that visibility if they don't feel like they can tackle that on their own. But Josh, same question to you as well. Final thoughts or important things to remember?
Yeah, sounds good. And I think Jack and I will both agree. I think we feel like that on a daily basis where we've got things from everywhere. But, kind of to tack on to what Jack said, I think when people hear optimization, they think tools, right? Like every conversation I've had with somebody, it's what tool works for optimization. And it's not just tools, right? It's consulting and tools. And I think you have to keep in mind that there's no tool on the market. And if somebody finds it, please let me know, that can handle every bit of optimization. It is a combination of consulting and optimization and buy-in from the company. So you can't just say, hey, come help me optimize. We have to have buy-in. We have to have somebody in the organization that is willing to, go through those hard steps with us of tagging and really making a change in an organization to adopt, FinOps or optimization.
Because this isn't a project, right? What you guys are talking about involves some hard pushing and struggle perhaps to get to a point where you have new processes and procedures that are self-sustaining and not overwhelming and catching you off guard. The whole bit is to do something, but it requires a new set of treads, and you've got to get to that point. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today.
Appreciate it, Rob. Thanks for the time.
Yep. Thanks, Rob.
Well, as I am sure this audience knows well, cloud is more than a technology. It's an enablement tool. It's an investment in agility and innovation, a new way of thinking, planning, and executing. It's a foundation on which to future-proof your business. I encourage you to get your own copy of Cloud Priorities for 2023. And at the time of this recording, there was at least one other deep dive associated with this report, edge computing.
Users have started seeing buffering, slowness, maybe the app's crashing or timing out. So this is because the data is having to travel so far back and forth, so across that bridge, back and forth.
We have ability here with inside of edge computing to provide more resource availability.
And these are just a few of the experts WWT has ready to assist with your digital transformation. I encourage you to reach out and leverage the people, process, and technology they offer to help you succeed in the most efficient way possible. My name is Rob Boyd. I want to thank both Jack and Josh for their time, as well as you. Thank you for watching Tech 37.
Yeah.